I found out my wife was cheating because she started being nice to me again. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Not distant. Not cold. Not distracted. Nice. She started texting me during the day just to ask how work was going. She made my favorite breakfast on a random Tuesday. She laughed at jokes she normally would have rolled her eyes at. She even reached across the couch one night and put her hand on my leg like we were back in our 20s, before the mortgage, before the routines, before all the quiet little cracks started spreading through the walls of our marriage. Most people think betrayal begins with obvious signs. Lipstick on a collar. A suspicious text. Late nights at the office. Mine started with kindness so forced it felt rehearsed. My name's Daniel. I'm 38, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a boring but stable life. I worked as an operations manager for a shipping company, paid the bills on time, fixed things around the house before they became real problems, and tried to be the kind of husband who made life easier, not harder. My wife, Vanessa, was 35 and worked in marketing. Smart, polished, charming when she wanted to be. The kind of woman who could walk into a room and have people adjusting themselves without even realizing it. We'd been married for 9 years. Not perfect years. Not movie years. Real years. We fought about money sometimes. We got annoyed over stupid things like who forgot to switch the laundry or who left dishes in the sink. We went through dry spells, stress, family drama, all of it. But I never thought we were the kind of couple people whispered about after the divorce. I thought if we ever fell apart, it would be from exhaustion, not betrayal. Then came the gym membership. Vanessa had never been a gym person. She liked yoga videos in the living room and occasional weekend walks if the weather was good. Suddenly, she was going to the gym 4 nights a week. New leggings. New water bottle. New perfume. That last one caught my attention because she never wore perfume to work before. Said it gave her headaches. Apparently it didn't anymore. I noticed other things too. Her phone started living face down. She took it to the bathroom. She changed her passcode after years of using the same one. If I walked into the kitchen while she was texting, her whole body shifted, just slightly, like she was closing a door without making it obvious. I told myself not to be paranoid. That lasted about 8 days. The thing about suspicion is that once it gets in, it starts making connections whether you want it to or not. You remember comments that felt harmless at the time. The way she mentioned a guy from work a little too casually. The way she once smiled at a message and then immediately straightened her face when she saw me looking. The way intimacy between us became something she scheduled excuses around. Headache. Stress. Early meeting. Too tired. But for someone else, apparently, she found the energy. The first real crack came on a Thursday night. She told me she had a late client dinner downtown and wouldn't be home until 10. Around 8:30, I was heating up leftovers when our neighbor Colin knocked on the door. He was holding one of those plastic misdelivered packages people keep bringing to the wrong address in our subdivision. Colin was in his early 40s, divorced, overly friendly in a way I never liked, and too comfortable in other people's homes. The kind of guy who called every woman beautiful, like he thought it made him charming instead of exhausting. He handed me the package, glanced over my shoulder, and said, "Vanessa not home?" I said no, client dinner. He smiled. Right. She mentioned she had plans. Something in the way he said it made my skin go cold. Not because of the words. Because of the confidence. Most neighbors would say, "Oh, got it," and move on. But he said it like someone referencing a conversation I wasn't part of. After he left, I stood there with that stupid package in my hands for a full minute, feeling something sink in my stomach. She mentioned she had plans. Why was my neighbor discussing my wife's evening schedule with her? I didn't confront her that night. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I've always believed that when something feels rotten, you don't swing blindly. You wait. You watch. You let people think they're smarter than they are. The next day, I checked our phone bill. Not because I'm proud of it. Because by then I already knew. There was one number all over the log. Calls at lunch. Texts late at night. Random bursts during work hours. I copied it down and searched it. It came back to a prepaid line. No name. But I had a feeling. A very specific one. So the next time Colin was outside pretending to wash his truck for the third time that week, I walked over with a beer and made small talk. Asked how work was going. Asked whether he was still seeing that woman he'd brought to the neighborhood barbecue 2 months ago. He laughed and said, "Nah, too much drama. I like keeping things uncomplicated these days." Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and for half a second, smiled in exactly the same private way Vanessa had been smiling lately. That was enough for me. I didn't have proof yet. Not the kind of proof you can hold in your hand. But the pieces were starting to lock together, and once they did, I couldn't unsee it. Over the next week, I became very quiet. Vanessa noticed. She asked me twice if everything was okay. I said work was stressful. She nodded too quickly, like she was relieved to have an explanation she could use. She even offered to book us a weekend away. That almost made me laugh. Imagine cheating on your spouse and then suggesting a romantic getaway like you're doing damage control for a hotel review. I started paying attention to timing. On the nights she said she was at the gym, Colin's truck would disappear for about 90 minutes. On Saturday mornings when I ran errands, I'd circle back through the neighborhood and see his blinds shut in the middle of a bright day. Once, I saw Vanessa leave the house in workout clothes and return 2 hours later with perfect hair and no sweat anywhere. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. Still, I wanted certainty. A week later, I got it. I came home early from work because a regional systems outage shut down half our afternoon. I didn't text her. Didn't call. I just drove home. Her car was in the driveway. That surprised me, because she had told me she'd be staying late to prep for a Monday presentation. I parked down the street out of instinct more than strategy, and as I walked toward the house, I noticed something else. Colin's truck was not in his driveway. I remember every second after that with disgusting clarity. The front door was locked. The curtains were partly drawn. The house looked normal, which somehow made it worse. I unlocked the door as quietly as I could and stepped inside. At first, I didn't hear anything. Then I heard laughter. Soft. Muffled. Upstairs. I don't know what people expect for moments like that. Rage. Shouting. Kicking doors open. But when it actually happens, at least for me, it was like my whole body went cold and hyper-focused at the same time. My heartbeat slowed. My breathing got quiet. Every step felt deliberate. I walked up the stairs and followed the sound to our bedroom. Our bedroom. The door was almost closed, but not fully. And there they were. Vanessa in the bed I paid for, with the neighbor I had shaken hands with, borrowed tools from, nodded to across the lawn like some suburban idiot who thought decency meant something. For a second, neither of them saw me. That gave me enough time to look. Not glance. Look. I saw her face first. Relaxed. Happy. More alive than she'd looked with me in months. Then I saw him, and I swear to God, the ugliest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the arrogance. The total comfort. Like he belonged there. Then Vanessa turned her head and saw me standing in the doorway. The scream she let out wasn't guilt. It was fear. Colin scrambled like a rat. Vanessa yanked the sheet up to her chest and started saying my name over and over like repetition could somehow rewind time. I didn't yell. That seemed to scare them more. I just stood there and said, "How long?" Vanessa started crying immediately. Real tears, too. I'll give her that. Colin opened his mouth like he was going to talk, and I looked at him once. Just once. He shut it. How long? I repeated. Vanessa said, "It's not what you think." I actually laughed. Because what exactly was I supposed to think? That my wife and my neighbor were doing taxes in bed? Then she said the sentence every cheater seems genetically programmed to say. I was going to tell you. No, she wasn't. She was going to keep doing it until she got caught or got bored. I stepped into the room, pulled my phone out, and took one picture. That changed everything. Colin lunged forward and shouted, "Hey, man, don't do that." I looked him dead in the face and said, "You're in my house. In my bedroom. You don't get to tell me what to do." Vanessa begged me to delete it. I didn't. I just backed out of the room and closed the door behind me. Then I went downstairs, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. Because by then, I already knew two things. First, my marriage was over. Second, I was not going to destroy my own life trying to destroy theirs. I was going to do something better. Something calm. Something clean. Something they would feel for a very, very long time. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the same spot on the wood like it had answers written into it. Upstairs, I could hear movement. Whispering. A drawer opening. Footsteps pacing back and forth. Panic has a sound to it, and once you've heard it, you never confuse it with anything else. I didn't go back up. I didn't need to. About 5 minutes later, Colin came down first. Fully dressed now, but his face was still pale, like his body hadn't caught up to the fact that he'd been exposed. He avoided eye contact, grabbed his shoes from the hallway, and headed straight for the door. Daniel, man, Don't, I said, not even looking at him. He stopped mid-sentence. You don't get to explain anything to me. Just leave. He hesitated for a second, probably deciding whether to try saving his ego or his dignity. In the end, he chose neither. He walked out without another word. The door closed. Silence again. Then came the slower steps. Vanessa. She walked into the kitchen like someone entering a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. Her eyes were red, mascara slightly smeared, hair rushed into a loose tie like that could somehow make her look more put together. Daniel, she started. I held up my hand. No. Not yet. She stopped. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have control of the conversation. No polished words. No confident tone. Just uncertainty. Good. I finally looked at her. You're going to answer exactly what I ask. Nothing more, nothing less. Got it? She nodded quickly. How long? She swallowed. 3 months. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. 3 months of lies. 3 months of sleeping next to me like nothing was happening. 3 months of pretending we were still something real. Where? She hesitated. Answer. Here, sometimes. And, his place. I let that sit in the air between us. How many times in this house? Her voice broke. I don't know, a few. Number. 5. 5 times. 5 times in the same place I slept. 8. Lived. Trusted. I nodded once, like I was confirming a detail on a checklist. Does anyone else know? No, she said quickly. No one. I believed her. Not because I trusted her, but because people like them always think they're smarter than everyone else. She took a step closer. Daniel, please. I messed up. I swear, it didn't mean anything. It just happened. I laughed quietly. No. It didn't just happen. You made it happen. Over and over again. She started crying harder. I was going to end it. After tonight? I asked. She didn't answer. Exactly. I stood up slowly, and she instinctively stepped back. Not because I moved aggressively, but because she didn't know what I was going to do. That uncertainty was finally hers to carry. I'm not yelling, I said. I'm not breaking things. I'm not touching you. You don't get to turn this into some dramatic scene where I'm the bad guy too. She shook her head, whispering, I don't think that. Good, I cut in. Because here's what's going to happen. Now she was listening. Really listening. You're going to pack a bag. Tonight. You're going to go stay somewhere else. I don't care where. Friend, hotel, his place, doesn't matter. Her face tightened at that. I don't want to stay with him, she said quickly. I shrugged. Not my problem anymore. Tears rolled down her face again, but she didn't argue. That was the first sign she understood this wasn't a conversation she could win. And one more thing, I added, pulling my phone out and placing it on the table between us. Her eyes locked onto it instantly. The picture stays. Her voice cracked. Daniel, please, that could ruin everything. I leaned slightly forward. It already is. She covered her mouth, shaking her head. I won't send it, I said calmly. I don't need to. That confused her. I could see it. And that was exactly what I wanted. Because she still thought this was about exposure. About revenge in the obvious way. It wasn't. Not anymore. I stepped back and pointed toward the stairs. Pack your things. She stood there for a moment, like she was hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. Eventually, she turned and walked away. And as I stood there alone in the kitchen again, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the explosive way people expect. I was clear. Focused. And for the first time since I found out, I was in control. Vanessa left that night with a suitcase and a face I didn't recognize anymore. No more confidence. No more control. Just someone who finally understood that whatever safety she thought she had was gone. I didn't stop her. I didn't watch her go either. The second the door closed, I got to work. Because while she thought this was just the end of a relationship, I knew it was the beginning of something else. Something precise. First thing I did was change the locks. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. She made her choices. This house wasn't hers anymore in any real sense. Not after what she did in it. Then I sat down with my laptop and started going through everything. Bank accounts. Subscriptions. Shared expenses. Insurance. All the little threads that tie two people together without them even realizing it. And I started cutting them. Quietly. Carefully. No drama. No messages. No warnings. By morning, she had lost access to every joint account we had. Not illegally. Everything I did was within my rights. I didn't touch her personal money. I didn't steal anything. I just separated. Clean. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Vanessa. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Daniel, my card isn't working, she said, voice shaky. Did something happen? I leaned back in my chair. Yes. A pause. What do you mean, yes? I mean we're not a team anymore, I said calmly. You don't get shared access anymore. Her breathing changed instantly. Daniel, I need that account. My paycheck goes to your personal account, I interrupted. You'll be fine. Silence. Then panic. You can't just cut me off like this. I almost smiled. I didn't cut you off. I stopped supporting someone who betrayed me. Her voice cracked. This is too much. No, I said quietly. This is exactly enough. She didn't have an answer to that. Because for the first time, there was nothing she could twist. Nothing she could negotiate. No angle she could play. Everything was already done. Before she hung up, she asked one last thing. Are you going to send that picture? I looked at the screen for a second before answering. No. Relief flooded her voice instantly. Thank you, Daniel, I don't need to, I cut in. She went quiet. And then I said the part that finally landed. You get to live with it. Every day. Wondering who might find out. Wondering when it all falls apart. That's worse than anything I could send. I hung up before she could respond. And as I sat there in the silence again, I realized something simple. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes the cleanest way to break someone is to let them keep everything they ruined. The divorce papers were signed 3 weeks later. No screaming. No courtroom drama. Just 2 signatures and a silence that said everything words couldn't anymore. Vanessa tried a few times to reach out after that. Long messages. Apologies. We can fix this. I never replied. Because there was nothing left to fix. A month later, I saw Colin's house go up for sale. Guess things didn't stay uncomplicated for him either. As for me, I moved on quietly. Changed routines. Focused on work. Started rebuilding a life that didn't include lies hidden behind smiles. And the picture? Still on my phone. Not as a weapon. As a reminder. Not of what she did. But of the moment I stopped being blind. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I post new Reddit stories about cheating, relationships, and crazy life situations every day. And if you have a story like this, feel free to share it in the comments.